Hi, this is Ruby Powers with Powers Law Group. It is December 28th, the Friday before New Year's weekend, and you can reach us at 713-589-2085 or put a comment in our Facebook Live. We'll be monitoring that, and we'll be giving you the weekly update in the news. There's a lot going on, like every week, and we're trying to distill it in just 15 minutes or so. It's not been the most happiest news this week, unfortunately. We hope many of you had a nice Christmas if you celebrate, and a lot of time with family, and you're staying warm around the country during this close to the winter time in parts of the U.S. And we'll go ahead and move on to the news. So this is the 6th day of the government shutdown. It started on December 21st at midnight. So last Friday, and in all accounts it looks as if it will continue until the House and the Senate adjourn next week, according to a CNN report. And they will we're hoping that it will be resolved soon after they return. So it affects roughly 25% of the federal government, and this is basically an impasse with the president about wanting about $5 billion or so for the border wall, and not being able to get a majority around that idea. And so this also affects other aspects. For example, with the shutdown, civil matters involving the United States as a party are held in abeyance right now. So, for example, with federal lawsuits that we have pending, those are on hold. And for example, Trump administration seeks pause in immigration-related lawsuits due to shutdown. They're asking for federal courts to pause several high-profile immigration-related lawsuits due to shutdown over the border wall. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals granted the request to suspend briefing schedule related to a lawsuit brought by Maryland and D.C. attorney generals against Washington President Donald Trump over proceeds from the Trump International Hotel. So, federal litigation lawsuits are on pause right now with the shutdown, and this is affecting lots of different cases, from administrations, the president's own cases, as well as other immigration-related lawsuits and other federal litigation. We also, just as a summary from the article that we had written, Cynthia Millian had written last week, was that USCIS is still having interviews. You should still go to your biometrics appointments. Asylum should still be open for interviews. CBP Customs and Border Patrol is still functioning. And the part that gets most of the people need to know is that the non-detained court is closed. Non-detained court. So like a Smith Road downtown Houston, for example. So if you're not detained, your immigration court has been closed during this time. It is important to call and monitor that. If you have a case coming up, you should definitely talk with your attorney or double check that to confirm. That also affects filings and things like that, but you should do the best you can to meet all the deadlines that you have to meet regardless of the shutdown. But detained court is fully functioning, and most things that require you to pay filing fees for services are open. But I think there's just a general slowdown with the shutdown and the holiday season. So that is all things related to shutdown. The other thing that came into the news last week that we had mentioned was that on December 20th, DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen mentioned that they were going to have a new policy where they were going to do the remain in Mexico policy for all those migrants who are trying to enter the United States legally are not at a port of entry while they were waiting for their court cases and asylum cases to be pending. From my knowledge, from having talked to people on the ground and just in general talking to researching, it seems as if that has not come into pass and is not actually being applied yet. I think there's a lot of aspects with the Mexican government, the logistics that still needed to be confirmed, but we're not, from what I can tell, we haven't seen it being put into play yet. So this moves to an unfortunate story that happened this week, Christmas Eve. And we want to extend our condolences to the family of the eight-year-old migrant from Guatemala who died in CBP custody, Felipe. We also want other families who've undergone these harsh conditions and grueling pathways to the U.S. to know that as immigration advocates, we will continue to work to make sure that there's accountability with any agency that deals with both detained and non-detained immigrants. So this week, an 8-year-old from Guatemala who had traveled with his family died while he was in CBP custody. He had been in detention for over 100 or so hours, and normally the requirement is only 72 hours. And he had a fever, and then they were sending him to the hospital, and he had vomited, and he soon died once he was at the hospital on Christmas Eve night. We had already had the experience. There was a 7-year-old Honduran girl who had died earlier in December, and then with the second death, CBP, the very following day, it was on Christmas Day, came out with new policies was it Christmas or the day after, to try to mitigate this from happening by doing more review, medical checkups within 24 hours of children under 10, and to work with NGOs and other government groups, and also just to find ways to have them detained less. It really has been disheartening, the response by CBP in the last month, because it's a combination of lack of accountability, and then blaming the parents, and then business as usual, but then possibly changing their procedures. And so this has been a toss-up this whole last few weeks. And with the combination of the Remain in Mexico policy looming, and just the continuing chipping away of asylum law, and the winter, it's cold. I was in Tijuana last week. I saw the shelters that people are staying at, in the tents, and children playing with little balls or rocks or whatever they can find, and being out there all day. It's very likely for this to happen more, with just more of a demand for people to want to come to the United States before this policy potentially goes into effect, but also just them fleeing from atrocities in their home countries, and also in Mexico while they're waiting. So we urge CBP and DHS to make changes to this policy. We hope that there will be a congressional investigation as soon as they adjourn, and there are members who are calling that out as for the future when they get back on Congress, and I hope that they will do that. This week I was in the Washington Post and BuzzFeed and Canadian TV, commenting on this latest update with Felipe Gomez Alonso, and I believe Washington Post came out with a recent article, talking about he just wanted a bike, and he wanted to come to the United States. So sorry about that. So, we are going to be closed on Monday to the public. We'll have limited staff on Monday, and we are going to be closed on Tuesday because of New Year's. So, it is also a federal holiday, but, it's sort of confusing with the shutdown right now. So I will be speaking at the Texas Bar Advanced Conference on Immigration on January 31st, and at the AILA Nevada Chapter Conference on Law Practice Management in February in Vegas, and then also at the annual conference in Orlando in June. I think that there's a lot of need for experienced immigration attorneys out there. I constantly see people who are getting advice from non-U.S. immigration attorneys for their needs. Either they're in Mexico and they're asking people who are not U.S. immigration attorneys, or they're here in the U.S. and they're using notarios, or people who fill out forms. I mean, please be aware of this. That is unlawful. If they are not an attorney, a U.S. immigration attorney, that's unauthorized practice of law, And just please be advised of who you're getting advice for. There's so many changes right now. You need to be getting advice from somebody who's licensed and has experience and knows what they're doing. We want to provide this service to everyone who's watching just so that they can know what's happening. There's so much to change every week. You can also give us a call at 713-589-2085. You can comment on our Facebook and we'll answer questions during Facebook Live. We'll have Spanish later on today. We just, and to end on some happy notes, we have calendars. They are free if you want one. They're really pretty. I really like them. For 2019, most of our holiday cards are going out if they haven't already. And, I hope that everybody, and I also need to say thank you to everybody who's been giving us some donations towards our travel and efforts. This year alone, we've gone to the Valley 5 times for pro bono cases. We went to Tijuana 1 time, and I went to Pearsall to get my pro bono detained client out. And all of those times we were paying from firm money, and when people gave us donations to help subsidize the cost, we were very, very grateful because not only for the cost of travel, but we've also been putting in our time pro bono for all of those cases. So we are here for your immigration needs. Hope you have a great weekend and be safe during the holidays. Have time with your family. Remember to reflect on 2018 and all the possibilities of 2019. Thanks for watching. This is Ruby Powers with Powers Law Group.